Hello, my loves, and welcome to yet another entry in the Ages of Chaos. Now, following on from the last video, we're going to be taking a look at the Book of Tzeentch in Codex Chaos Daemons for Warhammer 40,000's ninth edition. I will be getting round to doing the World Eaters very soon, by the way, because that book came today, along with Arcs of Omen, Angron. I need to look at those as well. Both of the currently released Arcs of Omen books will be getting their own videos at certain points, but for today, we're going to be taking a look at the Changer of Ways, the Chaos Power Tzeentch, or however you frigging pronounce it. What I love about so many of the Chaos Powers and the demons themselves is that their naming conventions are Lovecraftian, and none more so than Tzeentch, because Tzeentch is Atzathoth, effectively. Tzeentch is the most Lovecraftian of a Lovecraftian bunch, if you like. He very much emphasizes the manifold, shifting, unknowable mania and horror of Lovecraftian horror itself, of the 40k universe. He's the most notable example of how Lovecraft was a very significant influence on the formulation of Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000, of Chaos itself, of what makes the metaphysics of these gaming systems and their mythologies distinct. Tzeentch is the Changer of Ways. He is the god, the chaos god of change and of magic and of fate and of the time stream. He hasn't changed a great deal. Like Khorne, he hasn't really shifted in terms of his aspects very much since his original description in Realms of Chaos, Lost and the Damned. Way, I believe it was 1988 when that book was released. He's remained, ironically, pretty constant for an entity whose core aspects, his ethos, are inconstancy. But there have been subtle tweaks and developments. One of the things in the original Lost and the Damned book, he had a very definite form. He looked like a big pink horror, effectively, with lots of faces crawling all over him. What they've done in the descriptions since that time is try to move him away from being so defined. That is one of the ways that he's portrayed. But because he is, by his very nature, inconstant, he's in constant flux, they've kind of shifted it more to that way. So it depends on who is worshipping him, or who is referring to him, as to how he appears. Like, there are certain cults that regard him as a giant eagle, there are certain cults that worship him as a living fire, or as a living star, and so on and so forth. He has many different shapes, in fact, probably more than any of the other Chaos Powers. Just by his very nature, he has more forms and depictions and aspects than any of them. In terms of this book specifically, one of the things they've really tried to do in terms of his background is emphasize the Lovecraftian nature of him. So he is unknowable. He is a chaos power and therefore is somewhat defined by the aspects that inform him. So he is the god of hope, ostensibly, in the same way that Nurgle is the god of despair. But by the nature of chaos and the chaos powers, that is not the be-all and end-all. Nurgle is also, in a weird way, also a god of hope. But he's the god of defiant hope, that you not wanting to actually change your circumstances, but to power through them, to endure them. Tzeentch is different. Tzeentch emphasizes that desire in conscious beings to change their conditions, so that the hope for a better tomorrow, for a different tomorrow. He's the god of the academic and of the revolutionary, of the politician to a certain degree. He's really quite fascinating in that regard. The notion that something so dark and so negative could come from what is ostensibly marketed as a very positive emotion is really, really interesting. The problem with Tzeentch is that, again, hope isn't the be-all and the end-all, and nor is the ostensibly positive changes his worshippers might want to bring about, like, for example, the revolutionary who wants to overcome a corrupt autocracy, which is very common in the Imperium, obviously, because it's inherently fascist and corrupt. Even if they achieve that goal, Tzeentch's nature is such that it would very quickly shift to another status quo, and then another, and then another, and then another. One of the things that's emphasized here is that because change is the point, right? There is no real end goal here for Tzeentch. There's no like grand end to his master plan, because that would be stasis. That would be an end to him. It would fundamentally alter his nature and therefore corrode his nature. He often does things, or certainly his demons do things that seem contradictory or that complicate his own agendas, that seem even contrary to his own agendas, if it's amusing, if it's interesting, if it will feed that desire for constant complexity and ambiguity and change. It's absolutely fascinating. He is, as a result, also the Chaos God of insanity, as well as enlightenment. And the way those two are conflated within Tzeentch is really, really fascinating. In terms of the way he appears here, like all the Chaos Gods, there is a depiction of him here, and it's completely new. It's unlike any we've ever seen. It does have elements of his previous incarnations, but it's much more Lovecraftian. It's much more unknowable. It's very difficult to see and get a bead on. If I can get a picture up, I'll show you. It's really odd. It's got elements of the Lord of Change in it, but it's not. That's not it. It's very fluid and protean, and I kind of love that element of Tzeentch. I like the fact also that Tzeentch undermines reality itself. All the Chaos powers do that, but Tzeentch does it more than any of the others. By his very nature, time, dimension, all of these things break down within Tzeentch's purview. And if you go over the page, just like all the other Chaos powers in this book, there's a little sort of narrative war zone that shows you what effects Tzeentch's demons have when they overtake a world. And again, it derives from ostensibly positive desires. It's Warzone Garmesh, and it is an uprising. It is initially an uprising by a cabal of workers who want a better tomorrow. They want something better, but of course they end up opening a warp rift which unleashes the forces of Tzeentch on the planet, and as a result everything goes topsy-turvy. Dimension breaks down, reality breaks down. There's a lovely bit towards the end where a ship that's been summoned to Garmesh to see what the hell is going on, they're in orbit around it, and they open comms channels, and that is a mistake. It lets in all the insanity, it lets in the influence of Tzeentch, and when they bring it up on the view screen, it's insanity, it's madness, and those who look at it go mad, and the demons that are depicted on it actually start to reach through the view screen, because that's how Tzeentch operates, right? Nothing is stable. Dimension, physical reality, nothing stays stable around him. It's true of all the Chaos powers, but they tend to affect reality in accordance with very particular imagery and symbolism. Tzeentch, it is just Lovecraftian madness. Nothing makes sense anymore within his purview, and I kind of love it. I must admit, I kind of love that. In terms of the game, we've got the Book of Tzeentch, just as we had the Book of Khorne before. On the cover of it, there's a lovely little Emperor's Tarot symbolic representation of Tzeentch, and it is very Lovecraftian. I mean, like, this symbol could come directly from a Lovecraft story, and it's very, very cool indeed. One of the things I do like about this book more than anything is that they've really tried to emphasize the horror of facing a Tzeentch force, like how maddening it is. That's how they tend to operate. Unlike the Demons of Khorne, where it is just slaughter, it's just very physical, it's very direct. With the followers of Tzeentch, they really go for the psyche of those they face. Because very often, I mean, if you're facing a Lord of Change, for example, a greater demon of Tzeentch, they know everything about you. They know everything about you just by looking at you. And it probably, even before they set foot on the battlefield, they know everything about you, and even stuff that you don't know, because they can perceive every potential thread of your future and your past, so all the ways you might be, all the ways you were going to be, perhaps, potentially, once upon a time, and they can use that against you and to manipulate you. It's very, very cool. I mean, I love the Lords of Change in particular. That model, oh my god, the current Lord of Change model is astonishing. Then again, so are all the greater demons. Speaking of which, just like in the Khorne book, you've got on the first page, you've got your Exalted Lords of Change, and these are just abilities that you can purchase for a Lord of Change in your detachment that make them better. So, your abilities are Architect of Deception. No foe, be they mortal or demonic, can trust their perceptions around this most cunning of demons. A veil of sorcerous illusion wreathes it so densely that its enemies may not discern the demon's true location, even should they stand in its very shadow. You see what I mean by the Lovecraftian stuff? Each time a ranged attack is made against this model, subtract 1 from the attack's hit roll. It's good. It's a very good passive ability. It means that your Lord of Change isn't going to get shot off the battlefield immediately. It's very nice. Master Mutator. The merest touch of this demon's magics causes the fabric of real space to twist and distort. Screaming victims find their bodies in war gear erupting into grotesque mutant growth that soon reduces even the most stoic or magnificent warrior to a mewling heap of fleshy ruination. Nice. At the end of your psychic phase, roll 1d6 for each enemy unit that suffered any mortal wounds as a result of a psychic power manifested by this model that turn. On a 2+, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. That may seem to be a small potatoes, but actually it's very good. Most of the psychic powers in Tzeentch's discipline, which I believe is the pandemoniac discipline, most of them cause mortal wounds. So if you're causing mortal wounds to multiple units, which again you very likely will be, you can then cause another mortal wound very, very easily on top of that. And there are also stratagems and bits of war gear that allow you to cause more mortal wounds. So actually, you can really stack them up, especially given just how nasty Lords of Change are psychically. It can be very, very good indeed. But this is the one you're probably going to want, to be honest. Nexus of Fate. Orbited by glowing runes that dance through the air like will-o'-the-wisps, the fates of all its allies and foes play out before the bottomless wells of this demon's unblinking eyes. In your command phase, if this model is on the battlefield, roll 1d6. On a 4+, you gain 1 command point. Very good. Anything that gives you command points is excellent in the current meta of the game. That's going to be the first one you take. If you've got a Lord of Change, that's going to be the one you want, because it's really, really good. 1 page of stratagems for these guys, which is very nice. It's all very contained. I like the format, actually. It's all very easy to reference. Minions of Magic. The mutating change fires unleashed by the freakish demons of Tzeentch pour through or melt away even the most formidable armor. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Horror's Core unit is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a ranged attack is made by a model in that unit, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, change the armor penetration characteristic of that attack to -3. Can be very useful if you've got massed horror firepower going on, which you're probably going to have. It just makes them that bit nastier. Horrors themselves, as we'll see, are not that, in and of themselves, like model for model, are not that great, but are a fantastic unit for lots of different reasons. So that just makes them a bit nastier. Burning Warp Fire. Employing their rubbery flesh as a conduit for the raw energies of the warp, these demons spew the resultant torrent of warp stuff as wave upon wave of mutating flame. Use this stratagem in your shooting phase when a Flamer's unit is selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack with flickering flames or the pink fire profile of fire that targets an enemy unit that contains 11 or more models, when determining how many attacks that model makes with that weapon, count results of less than 9 as 9. So essentially, it removes the random element from the shots that you fire with Flamers and Exalted Flamers. Now, Flamers are bloody nasty in this book. They are the absolute winners of the Demons Codex, I would say. They're so nasty they had to be nerfed. And even with the nerf, they're pretty bloody horrible. This makes them worse. This makes them even nastier. It's pretty unpleasant, I've got to say. Especially against Horde armies. It's very good against Orcs or against Tyranids, that one. Warp Jaws. Many Tzeentch demons possess slavering maws that drill corrosive warp stuff, quite capable of eating through or transmogrifying, that's a lovely word, isn't it, the toughest corporeal armor. Use this stratagem in the fight phase when a Screamer's, Fate Skimmer, or Burning Chariot unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of the phase, each time an attack is made with a Lamprey bite or Screamer bites by a model in that unit, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. It's very nice. It just means that your Screamer units and your Fate Skimmers and your Burning Chariots are going to be better in melee, which, Tzeentch, these armies don't do well in melee generally. Lords of Change are pretty good, but nothing else is that great. So that's a very nice way of giving them a one-up, Magical boon, arcane knowledge and mystical power have ever been the domain of Tzeentch and his minions. Use this stratagem at the start of your psychic phase. Select 1 Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch Psyker unit from your army. That unit can attempt to manifest 1 additional psychic power this turn. It's very nice, it's very good. Used at the right time could even turn the tide of a phase or even an entire battle. Very, very nice. Given the amount of psychic powers you're chucking out anyway, that's brilliant. It's almost overkill. Relics of the Impossible Fortress. Many of the arcane devices wielded by the Servants of Tzeentch just means that you can take an extra. You can take a relic. It's the standard. This one's good. This one's very good. This is very equivalent to other stratagems you find in the Thousand Suns book. Warp Portal. This demon prizes open an unnatural shortcut through the warp. Use this stratagem in your movement phase when you select a Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch character model from your army to make a normal move. Instead of moving it as normal, remove that unit from the battlefield and set it up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches from any enemy models. Really good. Really good. You can pull some nasty bloody tricks with that one, I'm telling you. You can double bluff the enemy with that one. You can make them think that your Lord of Change or something is going to go towards that unit, when in fact you're going to teleport them over here to deal with this lot. It's really good. It can be very useful indeed. Flames of Mutation. Tzeentch demons advance wreathed in kaleidoscopic flame. Use this stratagem at the end of the fight phase. Select 1 Horrors unit from your army that had any models destroyed during this phase. Select 1 enemy unit within engagement range of that unit and roll 1d6 for each model in that Horrors unit that was destroyed during this phase. For each 6, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. An enemy unit can only suffer a maximum of 6 mortal wounds per phase as a result of this. It's kind of nice. If you've got a horror unit that's had models destroyed in it and you want to give something back, or if you think you can actually sort of cripple a difficult enemy unit with this, it can be very nasty. It can sort of come out of nowhere, especially if the enemy isn't really aware, your opponent isn't aware that this stratagem exists. It can be quite nice. And finally, this is a lovely reference to an old standard, as it were, pun, very, very definitely intended. The Blasted Standard, which has been in Tzeentch armies since the Realms of Chaos days. The demons unleash transmutational energies from their icon. Use this stratagem at the start of your psychic phase. Select 1 Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch icon unit from your army. Until the end of the phase, each time you make an unmodified psychic test of 9 or more, for a friendly Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch Psyker unit within 12 inches of that unit, the closest enemy unit within 24 inches and visible to that selected unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Because you're going to be using a lot of Psykers in your army, if you can position your army in a particular way and get that off, that could be very good indeed. That could cause some real damage. Now, this is where it's at for Tzeentch. The Psychic discipline, which of course Khorne didn't have. This is the Pan-Demoniac discipline. So all of them have got their own, all of the gods have got their own bespoke Psychic disciplines in this, and they're all called something different. It's really, really fun. We've got the Noctic discipline for Undivided. We've got the Soul Stain discipline for Slaanesh, which is really bloody lovely. What have we got for Nurgle? We've got for Nurgle, who I'll be doing next time, by the way. We've got the Warp Rot discipline, which is very lovely, isn't it? I'm going to have to clean my hands after turning to that page. And we've got the Pandemoniac discipline here for Tzeentch. So, number 1 is Boon of Change. As the demon chants, its minions begin to twist and new forms take shape as the will of Tzeentch demands. It's a blessing. Boon of Change has a warp charge value of 6, so a really low warp charge for these guys. If manifested, select 1 friendly Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch unit within 18 inches of this cycle and roll 1d3. Until the start of your next psychic phase, that unit gains the relevant bonus from the table below, so they can sprout extra limbs, which gives 2 inches to their move, mystical strength, which adds 1 to their strength, which can actually be really useful for flamers. Can be very useful for flames because their flames have the same strength as the demon. So that can be very useful. Resilient Hide, add 1 to the toughness characteristic of models in that unit. If the result of the psychic test was 9 or more, which is really likely, you could select what happens. So if you can get that 9 or more, which is really likely, actually that's really good. That can be very useful indeed. All blessings are pretty good. That's a very nice one, actually. Even with the random element, that's pretty good. Bolt of Change, old classic. The demon unleashes a bolt of warp energy that afflicts the foe with sickening and uncontrollable mutations. It's a Witchfire. Bolt of Change has a warp charge value of 7, again pretty low. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to the Psycho and roll 9 dice 6. For each 5 plus, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. For each model destroyed as a result of those mortal wounds, the unit suffers 1 additional mortal wound to a maximum of 3. Very nice, very nice. It's your mortal wound generator. Very similar to I think there's a Bolt of Change or something like it in the Thousand Suns Codex, and that is very, very similar indeed. Very nice indeed. Gaze of Fate. Using its powers of precognition to unravel the strands of destiny, this demon extracts secrets from the Sea of Souls, there's a lot of sibilance in that sentence, and channels them through its own potent form. This is a blessing. Gaze of Fate has a warp charge value of 7. If manifested at the end of the battle round, if the Psycho is on the battlefield, you can retain up to 2 unspent Warp Storm points. Nice. That's pretty damn good, actually. Given the nature of the Warp Storm and the fact that you can't retain the dice after, that gives you a little bit of leverage, it gives you a little bit of certainty, so that's quite nice. Treason of Tzeentch, another old psychic power here. The Psycho reaches into the mind of its victims, subverting their will and turning them upon their own allies. Malediction. Treason of Tzeentch has a warp charge value of 7, again very low. If manifested, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to this Psycho. Until the start of your next psychic phase, the enemy unit is not affected by the aura abilities of other enemy units. That's brilliant. That's actually really, 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 really nasty, and can make the difference between key combats or key charges in a significant round in the game. That's I would take that myself. That would be I would want that on one of my best psychers, to be honest, because that is fantastic. Infernal Flames. Cackling madly, which is nice. You want to do that when you roll the dice, right? For the psychic test, you want to actually cackle. The Psycho's minions are wreathed in pink and blue flames that leap forth to consume their foes. It's a blessing. Infernal Flames has a warp charge value of 7. If manifested, select 1 friendly Legionist Demonicus each core unit, so horrors effectively, within 18 inches of and visible to this Psycho. Until the start of your next psychic phase, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to that attack's wound roll. It just makes them a little better. You know, it makes their shooting a little better. It's quite nice. It's not amazing, and I'm not sure whether you'd want it taking up sort of like a slot where you could get better spells, but it's not bad. It's not terrible, you know? Infernal Gateway. Again, another old one. This is normally the ultimate Witchfire spell for Tzeentch units. Opening a portal to the warp, this demon creates a tear in the fabric of the mortal plane that sucks foes into certain oblivion. Witchfire. Infernal Gateway has a warp charge value of 8, so a little higher. If manifested, the closest enemy unit within 18 inches and visible to this Psycho, and each other enemy unit within 3 inches of that enemy unit suffers die 3 mortal wounds. If the result of the psychic test is 12 or more, each affected unit suffers 3 mortal wounds instead. It can cause havoc, that one. If you've got tightly packed enemy units and you get that off, that can be really nasty indeed. And the fact that you can get it from 18 inches away as well is pretty horrible. You can potentially cause an enormous amount of havoc with that one. Right then, shall we have a look at the Tzeentch Warp Storm effects? So we did the undivided ones in the Khorne in the Khorne episode, so we'll have a brief look at them though, because they manifest differently. They have different significance depending on the army they're being used in, you know. So for Khorne, they had significance because they got them closer to the enemy effectively without them being shot to death. What they do for Tzeentch largely is they allow you to position your units to get off your shooting attacks and your psychic abilities a little bit more effectively. And that's very, very good indeed. As for the Tzeentch specific entries, there's only 3, as for the other Chaos powers. So number 1 is Deluge of Fire, which costs 4 Warp Storm points, so quite a lot. Use this effect at the start of your shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, improve the ballistic skill characteristic by Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch models from your army by 1. So that applies across the army. And actually, if you're going to be doing a lot of shooting in that phase, and you know you are, that can be very good. That can be very good. It just gives you a bit more of a guarantee of hitting something, right? Sorceress Winds. This costs 3 Warp Storm points. Use this effect at the start of your Psychic phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a Psychic test is taken for a Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch unit from your army, add 1 to the Psychic test. Very good. Very good. Most of the units already have a +1, or they have an ability to get a plus to their psychic test anyway. That just adds to it, so that is excellent. Like Lords of Change, for example, already have a bonus. That gives them another bonus on top of that. It's excellent. Rampant Mutation, 3 Warp Storm points. Use this effect in the fight phase. Until the end of your phase, each time a Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch model from your army makes a melee attack, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. Very good. Very, very good indeed. It just makes them a little bit more reliable in melee. So if you do have units that are charging in that have gotten into melee, that just gives them a little bit more. You know, it gives them the ability to actually cause some harm, because the thing with Tzeentch units is they're generally crap in melee, barring 1 or 2 notable exceptions. I've got a cup of tea, by the way. Hang on. You need it for these analyses because these books are quite big. So these are the Warlord traits. We've got Born of Sorcery. Tapping into the infinite power of the warp comes as easily to this demon as breathing air does to a mortal, which is add 1 to psychic tests taken for this warlord. So you've got that +1. You've got a +1 from the Warp Storm table, and then you've got other +1s as well, like innate to their data sheet. So the Lord of Change, for example, has the same ability as Magnus. You add 2 to its result if it's got more than 10 wounds remaining, and then 1 hit thereafter. So you could potentially get a +4 to psychic tests for Lords of Change here, maybe even more. It's very good. It's very good. Number 2, incorporeal form. That's another lovely word, incorporeal. This demon's body flickers constantly in and out of reality, making it difficult for adversaries to land a telling blow against it. Each time an attack is made against this warlord, subtract 1 from the attack's wound roll. Just makes it a bit more survivable. Not bad at all. Which they're going to need. You know, they're a bit more frail than the Demons of Khorne, these guys, which makes sense because that's what they are. You know, they're nerds, aren't they? They're scholars, they're magicians, they're not, you know, big burly fighters. Number 3, Fractal Mind. This demon's consciousness is a many-faceted tangle of infinite complexity that allows it to divide its perceptions and attention in a way that would drive mortal minds to madness. If this warlord attempts to perform a psychic action in your psychic phase, it can still attempt to manifest 1 psychic power during that phase without that psychic action failing. Situational but good. Situational, but potentially really good, actually. It just means that your psyker isn't going to be taken completely out of action while it performs the psychic action. It means that they're actually going to be able to do something that battle round. It's not bad. It's not bad. Old favourite here for number 4, Warp Tether. This demon embeds its essence into real space like a thorn, then exudes tendrils of energy that anchor its minions within corporeal reality. This warlord has the Warp Locus ability. This warlord has the following ability also, Warp Tether, which is an aura. While a friendly Legionis Daemonica Tzeentch unit is within 12 inches of this model, each time a morale test is taken for that unit, you can reroll the result. It's good. It just means that you can place your Tzeentch units more reliably when they're deep striking in from the warp, and also they're not gonna be sort of discorporated as easily as they otherwise would be if they're assaulted or something like that. It's pretty good. Number 5 is Lawkeeper of Tzeentch. Like some malevolent arachnid, this demon extends its web even further, ensnaring mortal wisdom and arcane lore and devouring it. Each time this warlord successfully manifests a psychic power from the Pandemoniac discipline, add 6 inches to the range of that psychic power. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. It just means that you can reach further. with your psychic powers. That's a very tempting one, actually. I think you would, if you've got only one warlord, that probably is going to be the one you go for. Number 6, Tyrant of the Warp. On the other hand, this is good too. The sheer ensorcelled might of this demon's presence in the warp is enough to dissuade rival entities and predatory sentiences from attempting to assail it on the metaphysical battleground. This warlord never suffers perils of the warp. That's bloody good. Each time this warlord would lose a wound as the result of a mortal wound, roll 1d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. It's very good. It's very good. Gives them protection against mortal wounds, which is excellent, you know. I mean, that's really, really excellent, and means they don't perils like Magnus. You know, you can make sort of mini Magnuses from this book, and that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. They're not quite as good as Magnus on the in psychic terms, because nothing is, but they're very close. So you've got your relics here. The Endless Grimoire. That's nice. Within the pages of this magical tome lie the secrets of every cantrip, incantation, and spell ever conceived. Though the bearer of this grimoire has access to the infinite knowledge bound within, they must battle the temptation simply to fall into the flickering pages of the tome and drink in endless reams of knowledge until they lose all grasp or influence upon the events transpiring around them. Psycho model only. Well, they're all going to be psycho, so it doesn't really matter. The bearer can attempt the following actions. Study grimoire. So this is an action. At the start of your shooting phase, the bearer can start to perform this action. This action is completed at the start of your next command phase, so they are going to be out of action through through what's left of that phase. If completed, select one psychic power from the Pandemoniac discipline. Until the end of the battle, the bearer knows that psychic power in addition to any others it knows. It's pretty good. It does mean you're going to have to perform an action, but it does mean that your Psyker can rack up psychic powers. They know more and more and more and more as the battle goes on. Not bad. Not bad. The Impossible Robe. This is excellent for Lords of Change. The wearer of this robe exists between several realities at once. Thus can a demonic commander potentially control Tzeentch's interests in multiple times and places simultaneously to further multiple aspects of the great plan. This effect makes it hard for foes to truly harm the wearer, who flickers between planes of reality in an unpredictable fashion. However, the robe is capricious and has been known to rip its wearer out of reality altogether, should they lose control of its powers. Once per phase, when a saving throw is failed by the bearer, you can use this ability. If you do so, the damage characteristic of this attack is changed to 0. It's excellent. It's excellent. You're going to want that on your warlord. On whoever's most important, you're going to want that. If your Lord of Change is hit by a railgun and wounded by it, use that. Use that, and suddenly it's fine. It's very good, and it's once per phase, not once per battle, once per phase. So that's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good, actually. The Everstave. This staff blazes with vibrant warp flame. As soon as its master takes up the eldritch weapon, they too are wreathed in the same demonic fire. From within this magenta inferno, the Everstave's demonic bearer hurls searing gouts of Tzeentch's pink fire, turning armor to ash and immolating or irrevocably mutating the flesh beneath. Psycho model only. Each time the bearer attempts to manifest a witch fire, psychic power, or smite on an unmodified psychic test of 9 or more, that psychic power cannot be denied. Again, it's really good. It's really good. Pardon me. I don't know where that came from. Getting a bit nurgly there. Yeah, it's really, really, really good indeed. It basically means that, I mean, they're gonna. It's an unmodified psychic test, so it is situational. But even given that, it's pretty damn good. It just means that you have more chance of getting off that essential psychic power, right? The Warp Fire Blade. Existing in 9 times 9 dimensions, the Warp 9 being the sacred number of Tzeentch, obviously. The Warp Fire Blade flickers with its bearer's sorcerous power. Every iteration of the blade strikes in differing forms and at varying angles. A plane of sharpened will, an outstretched hand of friendship, a wave of stellar fire. Seeking a route through every sub-existence to sever the soul of those it strikes. They do like their sibilance in these descriptions, don't they? Select one melee weapon the bearer is equipped with. Add one to the damage characteristic of that weapon. Each time an attack is made with that weapon, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on that target in addition to any normal damage. It's fine. It's pretty good. You don't really want to build your characters from a Tzeentch army to be melee based. I don't see why you would take that one above the others that give them benefits to survival or to psychic power, to be honest. Because you're not really going to want them to be in melee if you can help it. It gives them a helping hand, but I don't know why you would want it. The incorporeal, we're on Soulbane now. This incorporeal blade, there's that word incorporeal again, inflicts no harm upon its victim's physical body, instead carving its way through the stuff of their very soul. So ephemeral and unreal is this strange weapon that it is impossible to cross blades with Soulbane, for its ghostly edge will pass straight through any guard. Those struck by Soulbane collapse in agony, writhing and screaming as their lacerated essences slowly bleed away into the immaterium. Model equipped with Rod of Sorcery only. This relic replaces a Rod of Sorcery and has the following profile. So this is a long-range weapon. So it's just a really good long-range weapon. Soulbane, range 12 inches, Assault 3, die 3, so a lot of shots. Strength 6, Armor Piercing 2, and Damage 3. It's good. It's good. It's just a very nice shooting weapon, you know? Soul Eater Stave. Invisible to those without witch sight. Ethereal pseudopods, grasping talons, and moors of non-matter surround this twisted staff, ever alert to the cry of a soul newly torn from its body. Riding the power channeled by the staff's bearer, they hungrily devour every scrap of life essence they can catch before it is lost to the maelstrom of the warp's myriad predators. This unholy feast serves to infuse the stave's demon wielder with stolen vigour, which flows from the weapon into its master through its nightmarish web of tendrils and parasitic tethers. Psycho model only. Each time an enemy model is destroyed by a mortal wound inflicted as a result of a psychic power manifested by the bearer, roll 1d6. On a 4+, the bearer regains 1 lost wound. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Again, it's just ensuring that your precious psychers are a bit more survivable, that they're not going to be taken out too early, because that's the thing with Tzeentch armies, especially this Tzeentch army. If your psychers are taken out, you're kind of done. This is more true, I would say, of the Demons of Tzeentch than it is of the Thousand Sons. The Thousand Sons can potentially keep going. They've got units that can stand even without their psychic support, like Scarab Occult Terminators and Rubricae, for example. These guys don't. These guys powerfully don't. They need their psychers. They really do. So in terms of the data sheets, just like the Khorne one, everyone's had a glow up. Like your Kairos Fate Weaver, for example. He's just now a really, really badass Lord of Change. He's tougher. He's got more wounds. He's got some lovely, lovely special rules to him, as well as almost all of the special rules that apply to Lords of Change as well. The big one, the big thing for Kairos is because of his two heads, one that looks forward into the future, one that looks into the past, he has special abilities. So one head looks forward. Each time a psychic test is taken for this model, add the current battle round number to the result. So the further you get into the battle, the more powerful a psychic he becomes, and that's really bloody good. By the end of the battle, he's going to be auto-casting. He's just going to be auto-casting, and that is excellent. One head looks back. Once per battle, when your opponent uses a stratagem, excluding the command reroll stratagem, you can use this ability. If you do so, until the end of the battle, the CP cost your opponent must pay to use that stratagem again is increased by 1. That can be excellent. If your opponent is relying upon a particular key stratagem, that makes it much more difficult for them to use it for the rest of the battle. It's very nice. The other thing, of course, is that this guy knows all of the psychic powers from the Pandemoniac discipline automatically. So again, he's like a mini Magnus. He's a bit like a mini Magnus, who is pretty tough and pretty nasty, you know? Lots of wounds. Not very high toughness, so he can get shot off the board. You're going to have to watch that. But yeah, he's an amazing psyker, as you would expect. The Lord of Change is more or less just like him. It just lacks the one head looks forward, the one head looks back, and also doesn't know all of the psychic powers from the Pandemoniac discipline. It knows 3, which is fine, you know? Absolutely fine. The Lord of Change also has a few more options, obviously, like it can carry a Rod of Sorcery, a Baleful Sword, and it also has access to the relics of Tzeentch, so it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. The Changeling, lovely. I always like the Changeling as a model and as a concept. Very situational, but if you can maneuver him into such a position that he's adjacent to an enemy model that's very good in melee, he can make all the difference. Very situational, but his ability to mimic like the weapon skill, strength and attacks of those around him, and also for his staff to mimic an enemy weapon, That's very good. That can be very good indeed. He can actually become a linchpin in your close combats, which the enemy is not going to expect. He's difficult to use, but then again, you'd expect that. He's a trickster, right? You've got your normal heralds, and they've all had a little bit of a glow up, but more specifically, they all fulfill a particular role now. So you've got your fate skimmers, who are horrors on chariots of Tzeentch. And what they can do is they lead shoals of screamers into the foe, so they give a benefit to screamers. They're also psychics, of course, so they're psychers, so they have access to the psychic powers. Flux masters, they're all about supporting your horrors and buffing your horrors up. Again, psychers. You've got your blue scribes, and the blue scribes are really fun. Not only are they really funny, they also have these very interesting abilities to debuff enemy psychers on the one hand, and then to buff themselves, which is really, really cool. They can almost automatically cast certain psychic powers, and that makes them very reliable in an odd kind of way. If there is a linchpin psychic power you want to go off, you position those guys where you want it, and they will get it off for you. Or if you want to debuff the enemy and make sure they don't, that's what you do with them. Changecaster, again, he buffs horrors in a slightly different way. So again, like the Changecaster and the Fluxmaster are going to be core to your army. You're going to want at least one of them because of the benefits they give to blue and pink horrors. Blue horrors have got their own profile here, which is very nice. That means you can actually take, if you don't want to pay for pink horrors, you can take blue horrors. They're not great, but they're not meant to be. The whole point of the horrors is they give you a little bit of long-range firepower, which is okay. It's not bad at all. It's not great, but it's okay. But their big thing, of course, is that they split. It's the fact that pink horrors have the opportunity, have the chance to split into two blue horrors, and blue horrors have the chance to split into two brimstone horrors. The way they've balanced this out in this book, because they've always had difficulty with that, the horrors can be really, really nasty and very difficult to shift because of their propensity to split, for the unit to grow as it's being destroyed. They've balanced that out here by making it a dice roll. You have to roll a 4+ before a model can split, and that balances it really nicely. It means that not every model in the unit is going to split, and you've got to just grind them off the board, but enough of them are that the ability is going to give them some benefit. In and of themselves, they don't do anything particularly well. They're not meant to. They're a tar pit unit. You put them where they can either hold objectives or where they can bog down the enemy, and that is really what they're for. Big winners, the Flamers. Flamers in this book are amazing. They are high toughness, very maneuverable, very fast, multi-wound models that are very difficult to take down, that have one of the best long-range weapons in the game, which is the Flickering Flames. It's range 12 inches, so not very long range. You do have to get them quite close to the enemy. Assault dice 6 plus 3, that's per model. Strength is user, they're strength 5 already, with ways to buff that. Armor piercing -2, damage 1. They used to, in this entry, that used to hit automatically as well, like a flamer, but that proved just too devastating, so now they do have to roll to hit, like any unit. But that doesn't matter either. That's fine. It's not much of a debuff, to be honest. These guys are the winners of this codex, just generally. They are absolutely amazing. You're going to want to fill up on the flamers in your elite section, and you're also going to want to take an exalted flamer with them, because not only does the exalted flamer have stronger versions of their fire attack, but it also enhances the blazing warp, the warp fire of normal flamers. It gives them +1 strength, so now they're strength 6. Very nasty indeed. Very nasty. They are brilliant elite units. The thing is with them, they can be hacked apart in melee because they're not very good in it, but enemy units are going to be really, really unlikely to charge them because they can just overwatch and incinerate them. They are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. You're not only going to want to take them in Tzeentch Demon detachments, you're going to want to take them with your allied Thousand Sons as well. If you can have like a little demon unit for your allied Thousand Sons, some horrors, some flamers, maybe a Lord of Change or a Fate Skimmer or something, you are well away. They are going to have such grand benefit for a Thousand Son army. As we've seen, Thousand Sons are doing really well as a result of not only their innate abilities, the core codex is very good, but the benefit Tzeentch demons bring to a Thousand Sons army, because of course you can include a Tzeentch demon unit detachment in a Thousand Sons army without them losing their overall army benefit, which is, of course, what's it called? The Sorceress Cabals, is it, or something? Yeah, it's very good. It can be a very nasty combination indeed, and Flamers are kind of at the core of that. Screamers are fantastic, very fast support units. They're very good at sort of getting out on the flanks of your army or ranging ahead and either tying up enemy units that you don't want to be sort of getting into melee with your army, or crippling those units that are going to be threatening to them at long range. They're very nice. Very, very nice indeed. They've got, their Lamprey bites are horrible. They've got 3 attacks each, and the Lamprey bite is +2 strength to strength 6, armor piercing -3, damage 2. It's very nice. And they cause mortal wounds over units that they move over in the movement phase. So very nice. Burning Chariot, it's an exalted flamer on a chariot, so it's even nastier. It's even more nasty. It's essentially a mobile artillery piece, and again, lots of benefit from that to a Thousand Sons army. Lots of benefit indeed. I would say, actually, on the whole, of all the Chaos powers in the Ninth Ed Codex Chaos Demons, Tzeentch armies have done the best. I think Tzeentch armies have made out very, very well in this codex indeed. They have some fantastic psychic powers, some real synergies going on, some fantastic units, but they are also fun to use because they are kind of tricky. You need to think about it. They're going to get ripped to shreds in melee for the most part, so you've got to really... There's something very tactical about them. Also, just aesthetically on the tabletop, they're going to look amazing. They've got some beautiful miniatures in the forms of the various heralds, the Lord of Change, the Changeling, some really, really beautiful miniatures. Strikingly coloured to look at, but also very interesting to play, very unusual for a Warhammer 40,000 army. Psychic heavy, like the Thousand Sons, even more fragile. They don't have the defensive capabilities of the Thousand Sons, but very, very interesting to play. I'm very tempted actually to put together a Tzeentch demon unit for my Thousand Sons, and maybe even expand that out into a full army, because I can see how these guys would be endlessly fun to play with. So that was Tzeentch, my loves. In the next episode, we'll either be doing the Codex World Eaters, which is very, very likely, or we'll be doing the Book of Nurgle from Codex Chaos Demons. So stay tuned for that. Until then, my loves, bye-bye.